Hello and welcome dear students. Today we are going to discuss the key topic, that is a detailed classification of cell types within an organism, cell, tissue, organ and organism as different levels of organization. The main study objectives of today's lecture are: order the levels of organization for living organisms, describe the biological levels of organization from the smallest to the highest level, describe the connections between the levels of organization, and gain insight into the complexities of structure and functioning of animate or living things. Devise ways to preserve our fragile ecosystem through the knowledge of these levels. Dear students, let's first have an introduction of today's topic. Cells of organism have been studied for hundreds of years. The first cells to ever be studied closely were those belonging to plants and animals. When study of cells first began, biologists first classified cells as either animal cells or plant cells. However, it was soon realized that bacteria and fungi do not fit in this classification. Biologists now recognize two kinds of cell organisms, classified as to what kind of cell they are composed of. The first kind of cell that biologists can identify is prokaryotes. These cells have no nucleus, which means that the DNA is effectively naked and unprotected inside the cytoplasm. The pro part of the term means before, as these kinds of cells were believed to have eventually evolved into the second type of cell. These type of cells are thought to be the first kind of cells on earth. All bacteria belong to this group. The second group of cells that biologists identify is eukaryotes. These cells have a nucleus where the entire DNA is safely contained, and such cells belong to animals, plants, fungi and protista. Some organisms are composed of only one cell, while others are composed of many more. The former are known as acellular or unicellular organisms, and the latter are called multicellular. In unicellular organisms, the single cell performs all life functions independently. However, in multicellular organisms, individual cells may perform specific functions besides working together for the well-being of the entire organism. The cells become dependent on one another. Most distinct cell types arise from a single totipotent cell that differentiates into hundreds of different cell types during the course of development. Animals have evolved a greater diversity of cell types in a multicellular body compared to plants, fungi and protists. Cell forms the highest level of structural organization in acellular organisms like bacteria, yeast, etc., and the lowest level in the multicellular organisms like higher plants and animals. Although there are three subcellular levels of organization: atomic, molecular and Organiz levels existing within the cells that together form the cellular organization. Thus, in unicellular organisms, level of organization extends from atomic to cellular level. However, in most multicellular organisms, the levels of organization extends from atomic to individual level, where cells associate into tissues and tissues combine to form organs. Organs are joined into organ systems. All organ systems associate together to form a complete individual. All levels of organization are related to each other. Dear students, let us now discuss about first part of the topic, that is detailed classification of cell types within an organism. A cell type is a classification used to distinguish between morphologically or phenotypically distinct cell forms within a species. A multicellular organism may contain a number of widely differing and specialized cell types such as muscle cells, skin cells, bone cells, blood cells, nerve cells, sex cells, fat cells, etc. in humans, and collenchyma cells, parenchyma cells, sclerenchyma cells, xylem cells, and phloem cells in plants that differ both in appearance and function, yet are genetically identical. Cells are able to be of the same genotype but different cell types due to the differential regulation of the genes they contain. Classification of a specific cell type is often done through the use of microscopy. Animals have evolved a greater diversity of cell types in a multicellular body having 100 to 150 different cell types compared with 10 to 20 in plants, fungi, and protists. All higher multicellular organisms contain cells specialized for different functions. Most distinct cell types arise from a single totipotent cell that differentiates into hundreds of different cell types during the course of development. Multicellular organisms are composed of cells that fall into two fundamental types: germ cells and somatic cells. During development, somatic cells will become more specialized and form the three primary germ layers: ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. After formation of the three germ layers, cells will continue to specialize until they reach a terminally differentiated stage that is much more resistant to change in cell type than its progenitors. Now we will discuss about common types of cells in higher animals. Cells in the human body number in trillions and come in all shapes and sizes. Cells comprise tissues, tissues comprise organs, organs form organ systems, and organ systems work together in an organism. There are hundreds of different types of cells in the body. The structure of a cell is perfectly suited for the role it performs. Cells of the digestive system, for instance, are different in structure and function from cells of the skeletal system. No matter the differences, cells of the body depend on one another, either directly or indirectly, to keep the body functioning as one unit. The following are examples of different types of cells in animal body. A. Stem cells. Stem cells are unique cells of the body. They are unspecialized and have the ability to develop into specialized cells for specific organs or to develop into tissues. Stem cells are able to divide and replicate many times in order to replenish and repair tissue. In the field of stem research, scientists are attempting to take advantage of the renewal properties of stem cells by utilizing them to generate cells for tissue repair, organ transplantation, and for the treatment of disease. B. Bone cells. Bones are a type of mineralized connective tissue and a major component of the skeletal system. Bone cells form bone, which is composed of a matrix of collagen and calcium phosphate minerals. There are three primary types of bone cells in the body. Osteoclasts are large cells that decompose bone for resorption and assimilation. Osteoblasts regulate bone mineralization and produce osteoids, that is, organic substance of bone matrix, which mineralizes to form bone. Osteoblasts mature to form osteocytes. Osteocytes aid in the formation of bone and help to maintain calcium balance. C. Blood cells. From transporting oxygen throughout the body to fighting infection, cells of the blood are vital to life. The three major types of cells in the blood are red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. Red blood cells determine blood type and are also responsible for transporting oxygen to cells. White blood cells are immune system cells that destroy pathogens and provide immunity. Platelets help to clot blood and prevent excessive blood loss due to broken or damaged blood vessels. Blood cells are produced by bone marrow. D. Muscle cells. Muscle cells form muscle tissue, which is important for bodily movement. Skeletal muscle tissue attached to bones, enabling voluntary movement. Skeletal muscle cells are covered by connective tissue, which protects and supports the muscle fiber bundles. Cardiac muscle cells form involuntary cardiac muscle found in the heart. These cells aid in heart contraction and are joined to one another by intercalated discs, which allow for synchronization of the heartbeat. Smooth muscle tissue is not striated like cardiac and skeletal muscle. Smooth muscle is involuntary muscle that lines body cavities and forms the walls of many organs like kidneys, intestines, blood vessels, lung airways, etc. E. Fat cells. Fat cells, also called adipocytes, are the major cell components of adipose tissue. Adipocytes contain droplets of stored fat that can be used for energy. When fat is being stored, fat cells swallow and become round in shape. When fat is being used, these cells shrink in size. Adipose cells also have an endocrine function as they produce hormones that influence sex hormone metabolism, blood pressure regulation, insulin sensitivity, fat storage and use, blood clotting and cell signaling. F. Skin cells. The skin is composed of a layer of epithelial tissue that is supported by a layer of connective tissue and an underlying subcutaneous layer. The outermost layer of the skin is composed of flat, squamous epithelium cells that are closely packed together. The skin protects the internal structure of the body from damage, prevents dehydration, acts as a barrier against germs, store fat, and produce vitamins and hormones. G. Nerve cell. Nerve cells or neurons are the basic unit of nervous system. Nerves send signals to the brain, spinal cord, and other body organs via nerve impulses. A neuron consists of two major parts, a cell body and nerve processes. The central cell body contains the neuron's nucleus, associated cytoplasm, and organelles. Nerve processes are finger-like projections that extend from the cell body and are able to conduct and transmit signals. H. Endothelial cells. Endothelial cells form the inner lining of cardiovascular system and lymphatic system structures. These cells make the upper inner layer of blood vessels, lymphatic vessels, and organs including the brain, lungs, skin, and heart. Endothelial cells are responsible for angiogenesis or the creation of new blood vessels. They also regulate the movement of macromolecules, gases, and fluid between the blood and surrounding tissues and help to regulate blood pressure. I. Sex cells. Sex cells or gametes are reproductive cells produced in male and female gonads. Male sex cells or sperms are motile and have a long tail-like projection called a flagellum. Female sex cells or ova are non-motile and relatively large in comparison to the male gamete. In sexual reproduction, sex cells unite during fertilization to form a new individual. While other body cells replicate by mitosis, gametes reproduce by meiosis. J. Cancer, that is abnormal cells. Cancer results from the development of abnormal properties in normal cells that enable them to divide uncontrollably and spread to other locations. Cancer cell development can be caused by mutations that occur from factors such as chemicals, radiations, ultraviolet light, chromosome replication errors, or viral infection. Cancer cells lose sensitivity to anti-growth signals, proliferate rapidly, and lose the ability to undergo apoptosis or programmed cell death. Now let us discuss about common types of cells in higher plants. Plant cells are a type of eukaryotic cell. As the plant grows, its cells become specialized to perform specific functions. There are various types of plant cells which include parenchyma cells, sclerenchyma cells, collenchyma cells, xylem cells, and phloem cells. Parenchyma cells. Parenchyma cells are the major cells of plants. They make up plant leaves and are responsible for the plant metabolism and food production. These cells are typically more flexible than others because they are thinner. For example, transfer cells, satellite parenchyma cells, water storage cells, chlorenchyma cells. Sclerenchyma cells. Sclerenchyma cells are very hard and therefore give support to plant. They usually exist in the plant roots and do not live post-maturity. For example, fibers and sclerites. Collenchyma cells. Collenchyma cells are also hard but not as hard as sclerenchyma cells. They also provide plant with support, but normally when the plant is young. They grow and stretch as the plant grows. Xylem cells. Xylem cells are also known as water conducting cells. They are hard cells that bring water up to the leaves. They do not live post maturity, but their cell wall remains to allow water to flow freely through the plant. For example, trichates, trachea. Phloem cells. Phloem cells are a system of cells that transport sugar produced by the leaves throughout the plant. These cells live post maturity. For example, sieve tubes, companion cells. Now moving to second part of the topic, let's have a discourse about biological organization. Biological organization is the hierarchy of complex biological structures and systems that define life using a reductionist approach. Modern studies of living matter demonstrate that a series of integrated levels of organization result in the vital manifestation of the organism. The concept of the levels of organization as developed by Needham and others implies that in the entire universe, in both the non-living and living worlds, there are such various levels of different complexity that the laws or rules that are encountered at one level may not appear at lower levels. This concept can be applied to different structural constituents of cell or to the association of numerous cells in a tissue and of different tissues in an organism. The hierarchy in multicellular organisms extend from atoms to individual level. Each level in the hierarchy represents an increase in organizational complexity, with each object being primarily composed of the previous level's basic unit. The basic principle behind the organization is the concept of emergence. The properties and functions found at a hierarchical level are not present and irrelevant at the lower levels. These levels reduce complex anatomical structures into groups. This organization makes the components easier to understand. Hierarchical theory provides a convenient framework for subdividing and examining complex situations or extensive gradients, but it is more than just a useful rank order classification. It is a holistic approach to understanding and dealing with complex situations and is an alternative to the reductionist approach of seeking answers by reducing problems to lower level analysis. Various levels of organization. A. Cellular level. The first and most basic level of organization for multicellular organisms is the cellular level, but it is the highest level of organization for a single-celled organism. A cell is the basic unit of life and the smallest unit capable of reproduction. In other words, it is also known as the building block of life. While cells vary greatly in their structure and function based on the type of organism, all cells have few things in common. Cells are made up of organic molecules, contain nucleic acids such as DNA and RNA, are filled with fluid called cytoplasm, and have a membrane made out of lipids. Diverse and colossal number of macromolecules orchestrate themselves in a specific manner to structure cells and their organelles. In case of microorganisms and most protists, the whole life form comprises of a solitary cell. In higher plants and animals, the organism may comprise of up to trillions of cells. The average number of cells in a human body is 100 trillion. Cells are known to bring about conversion of nutrients into energy, reproduce as the need arises, and carry out specialized function. Just as people of different professions such as farmers, physicians, engineers, carpenters, tailors, cobblers, traders, etc. run a human society. Various types of cells specialized for different functions like protection, support, locomotion, secretion, nutrition, absorption, transportation of materials, respiration, excretion, reproduction, sensory reception, impulse conduction, etc. run the life of a multicellular organism and hence resulting into diffusion of labor amongst the cells. Basically, cells are of two types, that is prokaryotic and eukaryotic. The prokaryotic cells with a small size and simpler form lack the nucleus and many other cell organelles found in eukaryotic cells. They are present in bacteria and archaea. However, eukaryotic cells have nucleus that encloses DNA. They are found in plants, animals, protists, and fungi. The eukaryotic cells are more specialized in structure than the prokaryotic cells. Moreover, they are greater in size than the prokaryotic cells. In humans, most cells combine to form tissues, but some cells are found independent of solid tissues and have their own functions. A red blood cell found circulating in the bloodstream carrying oxygen throughout the human body is an example of an independent cells. Examples of cells include blood cells, nerve cells, bone cells, etc. Cellular organization. Cellular organization describes the three levels of organization that exist within each cell: organelle, molecular, and atomic level. Organelle level. Cells are composed of organized organelles, which are particular structures that perform specific functions within cells. Various subcellular structures like mitochondria, endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi body, ribosomes, and so on present in the cytoplasm have been observed and studied on for their structure and functionality. It has ended up clear that functionality of cells is accomplished by these particular structures practically comparable to the organs of the body. The division of work inside the cell is carried out by these organelles. Organelles themselves are made up of organized molecules. Molecular level. Molecules are made of atoms, the smallest unit of chemical elements. Molecules make up the most basic structure of living beings. They can be found in all matter, living and non-living. These may be microparticles with low atomic weight like CO2, H2O, and so forth, or macromolecules with high subatomic weights, for example, starch, proteins, and so forth. Biological world has two sorts of molecules, organic and inorganic. Organic molecules are those molecules which contain both carbon and hydrogen, while inorganic molecules exclude carbon and hydrogen together in a particle. An organism is generally structured by a huge number of micro and macro particles of many distinct sorts. Some most paramount and bounteous natural molecules in living beings are glucose, amino acids, unsaturated fats, glycerol, nucleotides, etc. Two biological disciplines that focus on this level are biochemistry and molecular biology. Atomic level. Molecules are formed of organized atoms, the building blocks of all matter. Each and every living and non-living matter are structured by simple units called atoms and subatomic particles such as electrons, protons, and neutrons. The atoms consolidate with one another by means of ionic or covalent bonding to deliver molecules. Hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur are the most general atoms found in biological or organic molecules. The distinct sorts of bonding license atoms to be structured in incredible variety and intricacy. Tissues level. Tissue is a group of similar cells that usually have a common origin and work together to carry out specialized functions. Tissues are formed in multicellular organisms. Each one tissue has a specific function in the life of the living being. For example, glandular tissue, muscular tissue, xylem tissue, phloem tissue, etc. They are specific for secretion, contraction, conducting water, and for translocation of proteins, sugars, respectively. Humans have 4 different types of basic tissues: connective, epithelial, muscle, and nerve tissue. Connective tissues such as bone tissue are made up of fibrous cells and give shape and structure to organs. Muscle tissue is made up of cells that can contract together and allow animal to move. Skeletal, cardiac, and smooth muscles are the 3 types of muscles. Epithelial tissue make up the outer layer of organs such as the skin or the outer layer of the stomach. Nervous tissue is made up of specialized cells that transmit information through electrochemical impulses such as the tissue of nerves, the spinal cord, and the brain. Histology studies tissues. Types of tissues. Every organism is made up of 2 or more tissues, groups of similar cells that work together to perform a specific task. Humans and other large multicellular animals are made up of 4 basic tissues: epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscle tissue, and nervous tissue. Epithelial tissue. Epithelial tissue consists of tightly packed single or multi-layered sheets of cells that cover surfaces including the external surface of the body and line body cavities. For instance, the outer layer of your skin is an epithelial tissue, and so is the lining of your small intestine. Epithelial cells are polarized, meaning that they have a top and a bottom side. The top side of an epithelial cell faces the inside of a cavity or the outside of a structure and is usually exposed to fluid or air. The basal side faces the underlying cells. For instance, the apical side of intestinal cells have finger-like structures that increase surface area for absorbing nutrients. Epithelial cells are tightly packed, and this lets them act as barriers to the movement of fluids and potentially harmful microbes. Often, the cells are joined by specialized junctions that hold them tightly together to reduce leakage. Connective tissue. Connective tissue consists of cells suspended in an extracellular matrix. In most cases, the matrix is made up of protein fibers like collagen and fibrin in a solid, liquid, or jelly-like ground substance. Connective tissue supports and connects other tissues. Loose connective tissue is the most common type of connective tissue. It is found throughout the body and it supports organs and blood vessels and links epithelial tissues to the muscles underneath. Dense or fibrous connective tissue is found in tendons and ligaments, which connect muscles to bones and bones to each other respectively. Specialized forms of connective tissue include adipose tissue, bone, cartilage, and blood, in which the extracellular matrix is a liquid called plasma. Muscle tissue. Muscle tissue is essential for keeping the body upright, allowing it to move, and even pumping blood and pushing food through the digestive tract. Muscle cells, often called muscle fibers, contain the protein, actin, and myosin, which allows them to contract. The 3 main types of muscles: skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle, and smooth muscle. Skeletal muscle, which is also called striated or stripped muscle. Skeletal muscle is attached to bones by tendons, and it allows you to consciously control your movements. For instance, the quads in your legs or biceps in your arms are skeletal muscles. Cardiac muscle is found only in the walls of the heart. Like skeletal muscles, cardiac muscle is striated or stripped, but it is not under voluntary control. The individual fibers are connected by structures called intercalated discs, which allow them to contract in synchronously. Smooth muscle is found in the walls of blood vessels as well as in the walls of digestive tract, the uterus, the urinary bladder, and various other internal structures. Smooth muscle is not stripped striated, or it is involuntary, not under conscious control. Nervous tissue. Nervous tissue is involved in sensing stimuli, external or internal, and processing and transmitting information. It consists of two main types of cells: neurons or nerve cells and glia. Neurons consist of cell body and processes extending from the cell body. The neurons are the basic functional unit of the nervous system. They generate electrical signals called conducted nerve impulses or action potentials that allow the neurons to convey information very rapidly across long distances. The glia mainly acts to support neuronal function. Organs level. An organ is the next level in the organization of living things. An organ is a structure made up of different tissues having related functionalities that perform specific bodily functions on a large scale with incredible effectiveness. It performs certain functions with the help of different tissues. For instance, stomach, which is an organ, has function of food processing, that is digestion, has a secretory epithelium which secretes the gastric juice, and a muscular tissue for contracting the walls of the stomach and blending the food with the enzymes all together and moving the sustenance to the posterior end. The different organs of animals include lungs, brain, skin, liver, intestines, pancreas, rectum and anus, roots, stem and leaves are different organs of plants. The development of the organs additionally has a specific quality in light of the fact that this prompts an effective achievement of their functions both qualitatively and quantitatively. In animals, organ development is much more complex and characterized. The organ level of organization is considerably less definite in plants than it is in animals. At the most, we might recognize roots, stems, leaves, and regenerative structures. The recognizing functions can be appointed to each of these structures. Roots anchor the plant into soil firmly. Stockpiling of sustenance and acquiring water and minerals. The shoot upholds the whole plant, while the leaves are essential organs for food making. Flowers or other reproductive structures are engaged in delivering the cutting edge, that is reproduction. Organs can be classified on the basis of the functions they perform. For example, in case of animals, the tongue, ears, eyes, skin, and nose are the sensory organs. Flowers and seeds are the reproductive organs in plants. There are two types of tissues which form an organ: the main and the sporadic. For example, in heart, myocardium is the main tissue, while blood, nerves, and connective tissues form the sporadic ones. Most organs contain tissues such as parenchyma, stroma, and epithelial. Organs may be solid or hollow and vary considerably in size and complexity. Anatomy is an example of biology specially concerned with this level. Human organs such as the heart, the lungs, the stomach, the kidneys, the skin, and the liver are made up of two or more types of tissues organized to serve a particular function. For example, the heart pumps blood, the lungs bring in oxygen and eliminate carbon dioxide, and the skin provides a barrier to protect the internal structures from the external environment. Most organs contain all four tissue types. The layered walls of the small intestines provide a good example of how tissues form an organ. The inside of the intestine is lined by epithelial cells, some of which secrete hormones or digestive enzymes, and others of which absorb nutrients. Around the epithelial layer are layers of connective tissue and smooth muscle interspersed with glands, blood, vessels, and neurons. The smooth muscles contract to move food through the gut under control of its associated network of neurons. Organ system level. An organ system is a group of organs that work together to perform similar functions. For example, the heart and the blood vessels make up the cardiovascular system. They work together to circulate the blood, bring oxygen and nutrients to cells throughout the body, and carrying away carbon dioxide and metabolic wastes. Another example is the respiratory system, which brings oxygen into the body and gets rid of carbon dioxide. It includes the nose, mouth, pharynx, larynx, trachea, and lungs. Other examples include the nervous system, skeletal system, etc. in animals, and vascular system in plants. Organ systems of an organism are interdependent. The human body has 11 organ systems: circulatory, digestive, endocrine, excretory, immune, integumentary, muscular, nervous, reproductive, respiratory, and skeletal system. Each system has its own specific functions. One example is digestive system, which is made up of many organs that work together to digest and absorb nutrients from food. While most organ systems control a few specific physiological processes, some processes are more complex and require multiple organ systems to work together. For example, blood pressure is controlled by a combination of the renal system, the circulatory system, and the nervous system. Although we often talk about the different organ systems as though they were distinct, parts of one system may play a role in another system. The mouth, for instance, belongs to both the respiratory system and the digestive system. There is also a lot of functional overlap among the different systems. For instance, while we tend to think of the cardiovascular system as delivering oxygen and nutrients to cells, it also plays a role in maintaining temperature. The blood also transports hormones produced by the glands of the endocrine system, and white blood cells are a key component of the immune system. Organism level. An organism is a recognizable, self-contained individual. Different organs in plants and animals are assembled together to structure a distinctive individual. Amongst the different levels, this one is the highest. An organism could either be unicellular, such as bacteria, protista, or amoeba, or multicellular, comprised of organ and organ systems. A human being is an example of multicellular organism. Other multicellular organisms include insects, birds, mushroom, sunflower, etc. Organisms that are closely related can be grouped together under a single species. At every level of organization, structure is related to function. For example, water is able to perform many of its unique and life-sustaining properties because of its structure. It is a bent polar molecule that can form attractions with neighboring water molecules through hydrogen bonds. At the macromolecular level, the unique structure of enzymes allow these proteins to help speed up reactions. On the cell and tissue level, the rigid matrix structures of your bones allow them to be able to support the weight of your body. At the organ level, the J-shaped structure of the stomach allows for partial segregation of its contents at the early stage of digestion. Processes and events at one level can affect other level. An alteration in the structure of a protein can prevent a cell from functioning properly, This improper functioning can affect the tissue, organs, organ systems, and the whole body. And the reverse is true. Change to the body can affect organs, tissues, cells, and molecules. For example, suppose a single nitrogenous base in DNA is incorrect. This mutation causes an alteration in the structure of the beta globin, which is a protein. This protein is a part of hemoglobin. The altered structure of globin causes the protein to stick together and form fiber-like structures. Under certain physiological conditions, the fibers in turn distort the shape of the red blood cells so that the cells become curved and twisted. The abnormal cells get stuck in capillaries, reducing blood flow to tissues and organs. That is, tissues and organ levels. Organ damage may result permanently affecting body functions. This example describes sickle cell anemia, a genetic blood disorder. We can clearly see the connections between levels of organization. A seemingly tiny error at the genetic level causes significant change in the body's systems at higher level. Many genetic diseases arise in this way through small alterations in the genetic code. These are the basic 5 levels of organization of living beings. However, we can go ahead and add more levels like population, community, ecosystem, biome, and biosphere. It is necessary to note that the higher we go, it becomes difficult to clearly define the levels of organizations, which mean they are not as clearly defined as cells, tissues, organs, etc. For example, the ecosystem, though is placed one level above community, the former is not a group of communities. Roughly defined, it is an environment where organisms of different populations live together and evolve. With this, we come to the end of today's program. Thank you for watching.